The widow's clock when Lila moved into a quaint, historic home she'd inherited from an unknown great-aunt. She was charmed by its antique furnishings. The most striking piece was an old grandfather clock, ornately carved with figures of weeping women. The clock didn't work, its hands frozen at 3:15. The first night, as she unpacked, she thought she heard the clock chime, faintly at first, and then louder 3 deep gongs. When she checked, the hands hadn't moved. "That's creepy," she muttered to herself, laughing nervously. The following nights were worse. The clock would chime at random times, and always in threes. The sound was heavy, echoing through the house. Lila started feeling watched, her skin prickling whenever she passed the clock. One night, unable to sleep, she stayed in the living room near the clock, determined to catch it in action. At exactly 3:15 a.m., it chimed. The carved women's faces seemed to glisten, as though they were crying. Lila leaned closer, heart pounding, and felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. A whisper followed, "Don't wind it." Terrified, she called a local antique expert to inspect it. The woman, an elderly collector, refused to step inside the house. From the doorway, she told Lila the story of the widow's clock, a cursed timepiece created by a grieving widow who had lost her husband and children in a fire. She had infused the clock with her pain, and those who wound it would be dragged into her sorrowful realm. The expert left, urging Lila to destroy it. But curiosity gnawed at her. That night, unable to resist, she opened the clock's casing and found a small key hidden inside. Her hand shook as she wound the clock. The gears clicked to life, and the hands spun wildly before stopping at 3:15. The house grew unbearably cold, and the sound of wailing filled the air. Figures emerged from the clock, shadowy, emaciated forms with hollow eyes. They surrounded her, reaching out with skeletal fingers. "Why did you wake us?" One whispered, its voice cracked and dry. Lila tried to run, but the shadows closed in. The last thing she saw was the clock's hands spinning backward as the world faded to black. The next day, neighbors reported the clock chiming nonstop, but Lila was never found. The clock sits in the house to this day, waiting for its next victim.